There is no denying we are seeing the real time devaluation of our money. When I started this channel maybe 14 months ago, some of these ideas, they were kind of conspiracy. Nobody really took them that seriously. You were kind of a kook if you believed in this idea of a currency crisis or a currency reset. But now you're seeing it in everything you're buying. And this has been the central thesis behind why buy gold, why buy silver. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Steve Penny. He's the creator of Silver Chartist, which is the best newsletter for gold, for silver, for mining stocks. He has a free newsletter. The link to that is in the description and pinned to the comments right there down below, where he breaks down everything happening with your money, with your currency, how to participate in this wealth transfer as currency devalues and money moves into hard assets like gold, silver, and into mining stocks for leverage. So you can check that out right there down below at Silver Chartist for free in the description and pinned to the comments. Give a shout out to our channel sponsor, Vizsla Silver. So thank you for being our channel sponsor, Vizsla, who has had some really tremendous news lately. So make sure you hit the like button on this video. Comment down below. Currency devaluation is here. Comment down below. Currency devaluation is here. And is it weird, Steve, to now finally see a lot of these things you've been talking about for a long time happening?
Hey, Jake. Yeah, good to be back on. It, to be honest, it is a little bit weird because, I've been looking for this for so long. It goes back to 2007 or so that I started, uh, you know, my eyes were open to the Federal Reserve and how debt-based fiat currency works and all the things that how the global financial system works. And once you learn those things, you kind of expect it to happen soon. Well, it's been a long, 13, 14 years, but I mean, it's happening. And, I don't take any kind of, pleasure in saying that because it's not going to be good for most people, but yeah, it's happening. And there's really no denying that inflation is picking up now.
So when you say 13, 14 years, give us an idea of some of those fundamentals 13, 14 years ago that made you think, you said it's been a long time coming. I can imagine maybe 13, 14 years ago when you came across some of this, or I can speak for myself. As a 19-year-old freshman in college in economics class, my dad showed me how the Federal Reserve prints money and all this stuff. I thought we were going to have a currency crisis that very year. I learned it all, right? And now we're finally seeing some of these bits of inflation. So what were some of those fundamentals, some fundamental flaws in the monetary system?
Yeah, so you go back to like 2007, 2008, and that was the great financial crisis, right? When everything kind of crashed, and they unveiled their TARP program, Troubled Asset Relief Program, I believe they called it. And people were, back then it was Obama that did all that. He had just taken office, and I think the total package was like 800 billion. And of course, all the Republicans at the time were like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. This is so irresponsible. We're going to have inflation and all of this." And they weren't wrong. We did start to see that leading up to 2011. But that was 800 and something billion. We're doing $1 trillion packages left and right now. I mean, 800 billion is nothing. But I think what's different between back then and now is Democrats were in office in the United States, and then we had this thing called the Tea Party. And the Tea Party were these conservatives, and they're going to rein in spending, they're going to adhere to the Constitution and all this. And that all sounded great. It's just a shame that they didn't do any of those things. So back then, I think they were able to like reinstate some confidence in the system. People thought, oh, these Tea Party guys, they're going to get back into control in politics, and they're going to fix it all. Well, of course, that didn't happen. So there's no Tea Party to come along this time. So I don't see a way to reintroduce confidence in the system at this point.
There used to be the Tea Party, and now there's the Free Party.
Yeah, everything's free now. There's this mindset ingrained in our societies that the government can just give you things. If people need to realize this is, if you're brand new, realize, please, the government has nothing to give you. They have nothing to give you. They don't have any assets. They can only take from one person and give to the other. And the most common way they do that is through currency debasement, inflation. And inflation actually, they present this like it helps the poor and middle class, right? We're giving these bailout programs and stimmy checks and all this. Inflation enriches the wealthiest people. Inflation and currency debasement is the single biggest driver of the wealth gap, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Because how it works basically, when you have inflation, it benefits the people who touch that currency first. and then it trickles down, and eventually the prices rise. And wealthy people have assets that benefit from inflation. They own stocks, real estate, commodities, all this. Well, if you're poor and you're living paycheck to paycheck and you have this little margin in your budget, and all of a sudden your grocery bill doubles, well, there goes your margin. You know, where if you're wealthy and your grocery bill doubles, I mean that's more than offset by the assets you own that benefit from inflation. So inflation just hurts the poor and middle class, and you probably sense a little bit of passion in my voice because this is it's. I mean, if you want to boil it right down, it's evil. It's cynical, sinister. So it's the poor that are the hurt most from this.
Why do you think now that we're seeing so many people that are the big time mainstream folks? Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, has kind of said that inflation is going to light people's pants on fire. You've had a lot of these billionaires and mainstream. I mean, BlackRock is obviously just basically the secret government's arm for the Federal Reserve to go buy everything. Why? I mean, he's kind of Larry Fink's near as powerful as Jerome Powell in the grand scheme of this overarching asset bubble thing they're doing. Why do you think they're now all saying that it's happening?
I honestly don't have an answer for that, but it's noteworthy. But I'm always skeptical when these bankers, because your listeners know this. These guys are not on our side. They're not trying to help us out. So, when Larry Fink says something, the skeptical part of me thinks is he. Sometimes they, I watch what they do, not what they say, and sometimes what they're actually doing with their own money is the opposite of what they say. But in this case, I mean, we are seeing the inflation. So, what's his agenda and their motive? Some of these, influential people saying this, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they're speaking about it publicly.
Let us know in the comments what you think the reason is. I've been thinking maybe.
Do you have any thoughts on it? Sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but yeah,
no.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
No, I was saying for everyone to comment down, let us know your ideas. I mean, I'm not sure. I think maybe it's so obvious that they don't want to say it's not happening now when it's so obvious, because then it's just, I mean, who's gonna take you seriously if you're saying it's not happening when it is happening and everyone's realizing, and maybe it's as simple as that. Now, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is just that it's finally happening. I mean, even our interviews that you and I did 6 months ago or 9 months ago, it was almost like we were Paul Revere, saying, inflation is coming, and currency crisis is coming. But and the real gold bugs or the real silver people or the real people that are really into Bitcoin, like they understood, yeah, it's coming. But I got so many more comments that were like, yeah, right. But now I don't see those comments anymore. What is your interpretation on these things finally beginning to happen, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, my bias has always been that we'll see inflation first. There's you and I have talked in the past about like Peter Schiff, who's always in the inflationary camp, and Jim Rickards, who says we're going to see deflation first. And my take has always been that two very intelligent people with well-reasoned opinions can both be right, just in different time frames. So it's looking like we're going to have the inflation first before that deflationary bust. But I don't rule out the possibility that we could still see some kind of a crash and deflationary bust, which will only be met with more currency debasement, and then we see even more inflation eventually. I still don't think that's likely. I think this trend of inflation is going to continue.
Okay, so what does this all have to do with gold, silver, and mining stocks?
Well, I mean, from the 30,000 foot view, it's like none of this is new. I mean, empires, governments have tried this exact thing throughout millennia. We've talked about this on your show many times. So we're in the later stages of empire. I mean, that's what it is. And what happens is that silver and gold do a full accounting for the expansion of debt-based fiat currency. And that's a lot of words to say that gold and silver always do an accounting for all this money printing. Back in the thousands of years ago, they would debase their silver and gold coins with base metals. Well, today they just have a printing press. And silver and gold are the primary beneficiaries of that. I mean, it's the way to preserve your purchasing power if you want to get through this coming storm. But, I would tell people who are new to all of this, it's not a panacea for all of your problems. There's other steps we can be taking as well. But silver and gold are your kind of monetary insurance against currency debasement.
When you say that this is nothing new under the sun and governments have done this many times, what specifically do you mean by that?
So like you can go back and study every great civilization in history, and basically they've all they experience great prosperity, and then they expand militarily beyond what the tax base can support. And in addition to expanding militarily, they also increase their government social welfare programs. Like in Rome, they called it bread and circuses, right? And they did that to distract people from what is actually going on. So, they started off with sound money. They had silver and gold coins. And then that you can't just print that. So they started debasing those with base metals. And now you can create currency, and it devalues the existing currency. And there's something called Gresham's Law where, real money, good money is not spent. So everyone starts hoarding silver and gold until, the debased currency returns to its intrinsic value. That just happens over and over throughout history. And it's playing out like textbook right now, right before our very eyes.
And that is a slow motion. It's almost like the rug is pulled out from the currency and it slowly happens and then more all at once. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think there's some kind of quote. I'll probably butcher it, but things happen sudden, or things happen slowly and then all at once, or something like that. So it's going to at the last stages will happen very quick. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's probably coming. If not this year, in the next few years, I think we're going to start to see this trend accelerate. We're in the early stages of this inflationary trend.
So for those that have been following this channel for a while, or just these ideas, right? My channel's new, but there's Peter, Mike Maloney. There's been so many that have been talking about this for 10, 20, David Morgan, 10, 20, 30 years. But for someone that's been studying this for a while, how does it make you feel? Because I look at it and I go, wow, it really is. It really is happening. So what's going on in Steve's mind right now when you're looking at all this?
Well, I mean, it's easy to feel some sense of like vindication, like, see, I told you this was going to happen, but that's really not the right attitude to have, because, like I said, this is not going to be good for most people. So that saddens me. But the truth is that we can be on the receiving end of this wealth transfer. There's deflationary collapses and inflationary collapses, and when you head into an inflationary collapse, what you want is hard assets, tangible assets, and that way, whenever we have some kind of crash, quote unquote, wealth is not destroyed; it's transferred. So in an inflationary environment, wealth is transferred from those who own paper assets to those who own tangible assets. And I would also say too, here's a thought, is that I think a lot of us, especially here in the United States, and this is just me observing, a lot of people focus on like, I'm going to change the system. I'm going to, try and get them to change things in Washington. Like really for 99.99% of us, our sphere of influence does not extend that far. But you do have a sphere of influence within the four walls of your home, within your community, within your circles. So, that's where I would start to try and make change. Like if you're trying to get Washington to change things, but you're not doing things in your own house, that's probably something you need to course correct now and take those practical steps.
So if we really are seeing this slow motion devaluation crash, and you're saying that wealth transfers from paper assets to hard assets, give us an example of how this could hypothetically look in real time over the next couple years, and how does Silver Chartist and what you're trying to accomplish fit into that?
Okay. So if things play out in an inflationary bust, as I fully expect, it's confusing to people. And that's why the governments prefer that, because they don't know who to blame. I think it was, I can't remember. I think Keynes said, inflation, not one man in a million can understand it. So like let's say the stock market, I can totally see the stock market continuing higher. But let's say the stock market doubles, but your grocery bill quadruples. The cost of a home quadruples. The cost of your utilities goes up sixfold. Did the stock market really double? No, it relative to everything else, it's gone down in value. But in nominal terms, measured in currency, it's gone up. So I can see that where things go up, and then people, they're confused. They see everything going up, but they can't buy anything. They can't afford their basic necessities. And the way to prepare for that is to be in assets that go up more than the rate of inflation. And like we said, for thousands of years, it's hard assets, it's silver, it's gold that can really help you perform best. And I think of physical metal as insurance, and then the mining stocks are where you can really get ahead. I mean, that's where you can see the potential for really outsized gains that actually increase your purchasing power.
So for everyone listening that hasn't yet, free newsletter to Silver Chartist is in the description and pinned to the comments. right there down below. Steve, in your area, have you noticed a lot more hiring signs?
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah, you have.
Uh, Everywhere. It seems like no one can get help. You know, we were looking for someone to help out with do some yard work and get some things installed. And like you have to wait 3 months before they'll even come do the project. 3 months.
Wow.
Well, like why? Because they don't have the labor, and because the government is paying people more to stay home than they'd have to be to work with these stimulus checks and unemployment benefits and everything. Who's going to go take a minimum wage job when you get paid more than that to sit home? So, I'm not like, I'm not judging people who are receiving those benefits. It's just incentives. And some people actually really need them, and my heart goes out to them. I'm not judging at all. But, when you create these poor incentives, the results are that you see labor shortages, you see price rises. So what's happening is we're seeing increased currency. Everyone knows that the currency supply is increasing, but there's also a fewer number of goods and services in the economy because fewer people are working. So you've got more money chasing fewer and fewer goods. So you don't have to have a PhD in economics to see, well, that's an environment for prices to rise. And what's going to change that? I don't know. I don't see anything that can really reverse that.
It's an inflationary depression. And I heard that word before, but I didn't understand what the word meant exactly because they're two words that essentially mean different things, at least the way I have come to define them. One being inflation, the other being depression, meaning deflation. And so we're going to have this environment where you've hollowed out the entire economy, and you'd already hollowed it out before because, you've shipped over so many jobs over the last however many 30, 40 years. But now it's even worse because really basic low level jobs can't even get filled either, while simultaneously the currency is being devalued. It's an inflationary depression in the early stages. And I look at it and I go, I mean, how does one prepare um, for this? I mean, at this point, you don't have to be that bright to see the writing on the wall. And so I want to know, what does one do right now so that this isn't a video where it's just, you know, everything is crashing and oh my God. It's like, so what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. And we've said this many times. We're not trying to be Debbie Downers and depressing. You can prosper in this environment. You really can. It just, you have to understand what's going on and then align your beliefs and what you see happening with your actions. So, just some simple actions. Obviously the silver, gold. We pound the table on that, but consumer staples, things that you're going to use anyway, stocking up on them now. There's a saying that like buying things in advance and stocking up on them now, that's called basic preparedness. But if you wait until there's a panic, like with the toilet paper, for example, with COVID, that's called hoarding. If you go down and scoop up all the goods off the shelves when everyone else needs it too, that's called hoarding. So the responsible thing to do is do it ahead of time. And worst case scenario, we just see, you know, you, you'll benefit in any scenario with that. It doesn't have to be some collapse, and you're like, glad I have all my preparedness stuff. If we just see the prices rise, you've saved money because it's only going to get more expensive in the future.
So, what happens if the currency devaluation gets out of control in the similar way that sometimes a wildfire can just kind of, I grew up in California, and sometimes they lose control of it. They literally cannot contain it, and they have to let it burn for a couple days till and regather. I mean, what happens to a currency in a position like that? I mean, I understand I have a more extremist view, but I just can't see rationally how it won't. I didn't think it was going to happen like this, but now I can't see how do they stop it? Nobody has jobs, and the prices of everything's going up, and the supply chains. So what happens in an environment like that, do you think?
Yeah, this is a thought experiment that I really think every single person needs to think through. How does this really resolve itself? And like Jim Rickards he studies complexity theory, and he talks about complex dynamic systems. It's really hard to predict exactly how they're going to unfold. So really trying to predict exactly what this all looks like is really hard. But you can take some general principles and say, like, the standard of living of most people is probably going to go down. A thought experiment I do sometimes walking through Walmart. You think most people are receiving government transfer payments. They're swiping their government card to pay for these goods. How are they going to react? How is society going to react when that no longer works, when they can't purchase anything with that, or a small percentage of what they used to? There's probably going to be civil unrest. There's probably going to be shortages. There's probably going to be inflation. Again, not to seem like a Debbie Downer, but this is probably coming. And there's really, you said something like, how do they get around it? Because some people might be inclined to think, well, they'll figure something out. They always do. But
got any examples for me? Or
exactly, what can they do? I mean, if inflation starts to run, they can raise interest rates. Now, I think they probably will start to raise nominal rates at some point, but the key is getting ahead of the curve, getting interest rates above the rate of inflation. That's what Paul Volcker did in 1980. But they can't do that now. I mean, if they did that, it would be the economic carnage would be unprecedented. I mean, if they were to raise interest rates to a high level, I mean, the stock market would tank, real estate would plummet, and that would invite the bust right now. And politicians don't want that, so they're going to choose inflation, just like they always do.
All right. So, I mean, I look at this environment and I say, I think that there's probably more stable places to be in than America. That's my opinion that very few people seem to share. That's one solution that I'm putting together. Now, if I get away from that level of solution and I go to the next level, which maybe I would call mental strategy, emotional strategy, and self-reliance. What do you feel are the most important strategies or philosophies on that level of you need to create your own financial freedom. You have to emotionally strengthen yourself. You have to build, basically, you have to become a self-realized version and access higher levels of your own potential. If you don't, then you're going to get swept behind. So how do you make that leap to the 2.0 version of yourself right now?
Well, that's a really good question. I would start by starting with the small steps, like when you put it like that, and for someone who's in a 9-to-5, just struggling every day, just barely getting by, that can seem way out of reach, a lot of those things. So, start with the small steps, whatever that is for you, and then, let those build on each other. Another thing you talked about relocation. That's a key factor too. And, I've looked at there's a book called Strategic Relocation. It's really good. But, in this kind of environment, that the things we're talking about, really population density is one of the big factors.
Yeah.
Like cities are going to be pretty bad. So, low population density is good if that's practical for you. I mean, some people have jobs, I mean, a lot of people do, most people do. So, maybe moving out to someplace rural isn't viable for you, but if it is, that's something worth considering.
I think it just goes back to you have to build another source of income. You have to. And so on that front, you did that successfully with building your own business while also not just quitting your job the next day, lighting your pants on fire and starting a new, direction in your life. And I really like that story because, and we've talked about it before, but the reason I really like it is because it's more practical, less scary, and more obtainable. I think a lot of times, heck, somebody may even like their job, but maybe they're just recognizing, yes, I am going to need to bring in some more money given this type of inflationary environment where even rent and house is getting more expensive. So they're but they don't want to be overwhelmed. So they're kind of trying to piece it together, and they hear some YouTube motivational guy that's like, quit your job, go all in. And then you kind of get confused. I want to know the steps that you went from A to Z, given that you took a little different route to achieve that.
Yeah. So probably highlighting my path is maybe not the best because I made so many mistakes, but what I can say, if I were to coach someone who wanted to say, hey, I want to learn how to make some money online, just a little bit of side hustle money. Here's a tip. I mean, this might help someone is, if I were to start this over, or if my kids want to learn, I would say pick a software that's really in demand for online businesses, maybe like a video editing software or some kind of marketing software. that the business owner doesn't want to learn. They don't have time to go learn all these softwares. So like video editing, for example, go become really good at that. You can do that in your spare time, and then you can go be a video editor in your spare time. And there's websites like Fiverr.com where you can do freelancing and just make a little bit of extra money. That's just one idea, but that's where I would think is for myself, learn a software and then do that for other people. And that's good starting point.
Yeah, and I think that example of video editing is so important because so many companies spend a lot of money, more than they should, on video that doesn't even help with marketing. That's a fantastic idea on a new skill. So it's starting to think about what is a saleable skill that I can start to build upon. Even if it takes me 12 months to get proficient enough to charge. You're talking about finding you're talking about being calculated in building a specific need or skill set, right?
Yes, exactly. Something that's in demand and that you can do from home that's flexible. That would appeal to most people, a lot of people anyway.
Okay, so we look at the world right now, and you go, "Wow, this is pretty wild." Give me the Steve Penny family checklist of how you guys are personally preparing yourselves.
Okay. And most people probably think I'm going to start with silver and gold. That's not where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with, we already mentioned the just kind of gradually stopping up on the things you use anyway, to include food, a deep pantry. I would start off by considering the things that you use anyway, that you eat anyway. So that way it's not going to go to waste. It's not like you're getting pounds of, freeze dried food. Although, I do have some of that as well.
And you
So,
can get 10-year shelf life on some freeze dried food.
yep. Yeah. But I like to start with stuff I actually enjoy eating that we'll eat anyway. Get as much as you can fit in your closet for that stuff. That's what I think. So food, I think about energy and water. Those are two big ones. So we'll start with water first. Like we have a Berkey water filter. You can go capture rainwater through that thing, and it'll filter it and make it drinkable. So right there, you've got a way to filter water. So you've got water security for a couple $100. And it's healthy. We use it anyway. Like all the water we drink goes through the Berkey. But so that's one. And then I think about energy. You can get a Gold Zero, for example, makes these little solar panels with a battery, so you can plug in some things, and they have bigger ones where you can at least keep your refrigerator running if the grid were to go down for a few days or any period of time, really. So I think food, energy, water, and consumer staples. Those are kind of the big ones. And then my mind goes to, if things get really bad, where am I going to go? Just have a plan. Where am I going to go? And I think population density is the key factor there.
So we look at that. We look at the currency. We look at the devaluation. We look at the inflation. We look at the amount of people that don't have jobs, and you go, kind of an interesting blend of circumstances there. And then we think about what you said about the strong money goes into hiding. Whether it's gold, whether it's silver, and it happens when it happens quickly. And Scott Minner, did you see him from Guggenheim Partners? One of the biggest, most successful money managers in the world. He said gold's ultimately going to $10,000. Can you explain? First of all, did you see that? Did you see he said that?
I didn't see this one, but I saw in 2019 at the World Economic Forum where they said, what's the best performing asset of 2020? And he goes, silver. Didn't miss a beat.
No, he just said last week that that it's inevitable for gold to go to $10,000. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And it seems impossible given, the $1,900 price target. So I want you to talk a little bit about that domino effect that you've talked about, that you see, where eventually people kind of wake up and all of a sudden you see a quick move. You said 90% of the move happens in the last 10% of the time. And that kind of almost, to me, fits in with what Scott was saying there.
Yeah. And we talked about influential people giving their forecasts, and he's one I'll actually pay attention to because he said it in 2019 regarding silver, and he was correct. Silver had a really nice run in 2020, and he did forecast that. So that's really noteworthy. But yeah, I think, it might sound sensational, these price targets for silver, but look at what's happened to Bitcoin. Look at what's happened to like stocks like Tesla, these FANG stocks. There's plenty of things that have gone exponential. And, here's something to keep in mind. Our human minds are wired to think in linear fashion, but really that's not the way things are happening. We need to think exponentially. So you can't go back 3 years to project 3 years forward because we're on an exponential scale here. So things are happening. The pace of change is happening faster. And that applies to more things than just the financial markets. But we need to consider that with the currency creation and how that's going to affect things like silver, gold, and commodities.
So, how about a confiscatory government? Throughout history, as these things happen, governments become more confiscators than anything. So, what is your plan for that? I think that's coming, and I think most people don't understand. They just everyone thinks that it's not going to happen this time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it is. And it's one of the reasons that I'm getting my as Doug Casey says, he said you get your ass out of where you live and your assets out of where you live. And I want to know, what value does gold or silver have in that environment, and what is your plan to continue to preserve your wealth in more detail?
Yeah. So the primary way the governments confiscate your purchasing power is through inflation. We already talked about that. But taxes are going to go up. Taxes are high right now, but from a historical perspective here in the United States, they're actually low compared to where they've been in the past. So, I mean, I think it's all but certain taxes are going to go higher. So, I'm not here to give any tax advice, but I will say that there are tax mitigation strategies to consider, and get with a financial advisor or do some research on that. Because there are ways. The rich people, the uber wealthy, they always provide loopholes for themselves, right? And they never talk about it on CNBC and all this, but they provide a loophole for themselves. So you got to do some research and find those loopholes. So they exist. And even as the rules of the game change, they're always going to give themselves those loopholes. So we got to find those. So that's one idea. And then kind of pivoting a little bit to gold and confiscation. That's a big debate. I don't think they're going to confiscate gold this time. Back when they did that in 1933.
Why do you think?
So back in 1933, we were on a gold standard. So they couldn't really just create this currency like they are now. So they had to, in order to increase the currency supply, they had to confiscate the gold and then revalue it from $20 to $35. So that allowed them to increase the money supply by 75% or devalue the dollar by 75%. They don't need to do that now. They can just do it. They don't need to take your gold. And then second of all, if they're looking to garner your wealth, the low-hanging fruit is in 401ks. In the United States, 401ks and retirement plans are like the last vestige of wealth for the American citizen, the average citizen. And the government's got to be salivating over that. So I don't necessarily think they're going to come like just take it, but they're going to change the incentives. So what do they want you to buy? They want you to buy in their debt. So they're probably going to change the incentives like, hey, if you want all these tax incentives, you got to buy treasury securities. And we saw hints of that with Obama. I can't remember what year, but they called it like the MyRA. And it all sounded great, but it was a plan to get you to buy treasuries in your retirement plan. But anyway, once I start seeing them coming for the 401ks, they'll go there first. And then you start getting a little more nervous that maybe they're going to come for our gold. But I think the gold price will be significantly higher by then. So there's a lot of money to be made between now and I think any confiscation risk.
That's interesting. I never really thought about that, or even heard it really explained that way, that the reason they confiscated is since they couldn't just print the money, they needed it in order to basically create liquidity, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if they did that now, back in 1933, there was a lot more trust in government. People were more inclined to trust them. If they try that now, no one's going to go hand in their gold because they know that these people are crooks.
Man, that's another thing when you talk about the fourth turning and these types of things. I mean, now we're seeing all this lab leak stuff that everyone was censored for. I mean, it may get so bad that people quit listening to anything they say. And in an environment like that, once the public trust erodes far enough, I don't know what happens at that point. And I think we're getting closer to it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And it's almost like, not to be too cynical, but it's almost like their intention is to create civil unrest. I mean, it's like they're just pitting people against each other. Seriously, I mean, they're trying to. You got ethnicities against ethnicities, political parties against political parties. Like everyone just hates each other. Like, why are they? The media is propagating this, I don't feel any of that stuff. I don't hate anyone, but probably because I don't watch TV. I don't even have cable TV. We don't have it. But I like my mother-in-law, for example, she's got Fox News on all day, and people just go around parroting what they're told on TV, and programs you to like hate other people and other groups. I'm not sure. I think I probably went on a tangent there and didn't answer your question.
I think that is the bread. Do you think that's the bread and circus? Because I think the bread and circus instead in present time is a bunch of things. It's literally just creating this massive distraction from, Lil Nas giving the devil a lap dance and to this happening with, the lab leak is a conspiracy theory to, oh no, now we think it happened, to like all of these they're just shocks at everything, and they go on forever. There's like, you could make a list of like 1,000 of them, but the whole sensational nature of everything from quote unquote racism to quote unquote education to quote unquote shock value in Hollywood. It's like it's all designed to keep you there while the currency slow motion collapses.
Yeah. So true. So we're talking about things you can do. I know it was a few years ago, and this was a process for me, but we talk about budgeting our money and budgeting our time and everything. I would say put up filters around what you allow to come into your mind. Even if it's just passive, I try and tune out radio. I'm very intentional about what I allow to influence my thinking. It took a lot of time. Even with like learning about the metals and everything, pick a few people that you trust. Don't just follow everyone. Be cautious about what you allow into your mind, because it affects your thinking.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's interesting to see how much of that just seeps into us, huh?
Yeah, it's so true. And I'm not saying just listen to people who agree with you. It's always good to get opposing viewpoints, but we're just bombarded with so much information these days. I think it's important to put up some gates. Be careful about what you allow into your mind.
Have you read the book How to Be Free in an Unfree World?
No, but the title right there has my attention.
It's a book many people. Rick recommended it recently. I just interviewed Roger Ver, the guy that owns Bitcoin.com. Cool guy. I just interviewed him yesterday, and he was saying that's the book that changed his life. And basically, Roger's an interesting guy. He renounced his U.S. citizenship, left the United States, and kind of lives vicariously, pretty strongly through the message of this book, which is basically, it's written by a famous libertarian, and he basically says you literally the only thing you can do is focus on the things you can control that have to do with your own freedom, and no matter what government or media or society does, there's always ways to slip through the cracks. Mm-hmm. But you have to train yourself essentially to only focus on the things you can control that has to do with your own freedom. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, you put it much better than I did. And I'll tell you, just being honest, I used to have, I didn't have much peace in my life because I was always worried about everything. It's things that are happening in Washington and politics and what the news is saying. And once I tuned all that out, I've got peace in my mind. I control what I can control. A pastor I like to listen to said, worry is not good, because concern is good because it's about things you can do something about. So if there's a concern and you can do something about it, do it. But if you're worrying about things that you have no influence over, you're just wasting energy. It's going to suck the peace out of your life. So I don't pay attention to that stuff.
So instead, that's when we channel the energy into build your income, set your financial goals, get your house in order, get in better shape, whatever it is. That's where you direct the energy.
Yeah. Again, you said it better than I did. Yep.
So, all right, let's wrap up like this. So, give me, for someone that still hasn't signed up to the free Silver Chartist letter, give me an idea. We discussed a big macro topic here. And we had a nice philosophical conversation. How does Silver Chartist fit into it, and why should someone who hasn't yet go to the link below and sign up to the free newsletter?
Yeah, I'll start with the mission of Silver Chartist. I hadn't mentioned this before until last interview, but our mission is to help everyday people achieve the time freedom to pursue life's higher callings, things of eternal significance. Making money is a part of that, but that's not the ultimate goal. It's that time freedom to pursue things that matter in life. So we have a free letter that goes out every Sunday. And the goal there is to provide a ton of value for free. We're not there to spam you or hit you with high pressure sales tactics, just give you a lot of value for free. And then if you choose to upgrade to our premium service, we keep it very affordable because we want to serve more people. And what you get with that is a fully transparent over the shoulder service with real-time alerts. So I show our members exactly what I'm doing in my personal portfolio, the stocks I own, when I buy, when I sell, and the reasoning why. And hopefully, the idea isn't to copy me, but to see how I'm thinking. And hopefully that helps our members to make better decisions for their own circumstance.
This is a drink I like. It's Runa. It's kind of like yerba mate. It's a root in the Amazon. And two of these is probably about the price of your of your newsletter, actually. So for everyone listening, it's a fantastic newsletter. You can sign up for free, learn more about the best ways to prepare ourselves. I try to make this channel as practical as possible. Hopefully, every video you leave with at least one good new idea, one new thing to chew on, one new thing you can implement or reconsider. That's the goal here. Many people say, may you live in interesting times, and we're surely living in them right now. And one of those ways you can prepare yourself and kind of take that a step further is to join Silver Chartist. Steve, I want to pass it over to you to kind of wrap up here.
No, thanks, brother. Really, no more thoughts. I always love these conversations because we never know what direction we're going to go, and hopefully people find them valuable. And you did mention the price on the Silver Chartist for the premium membership. It is really cheap, but we're investing heavily into it to make it better in the next month or two. So there is going to be a little bit of a price increase, but we do want to keep it affordable. But it is going to go up a little bit. So if you're
inflation.
Yeah, right. So now might be a time to consider trying it out, the premium service. And, there's a no hassle cancellation policy. If it's not for you, no one's going to give you a hard time if you ever cancel, but the price will go up a little bit.
So give us a comment down below. Let us know one big idea you learned from today's episode. We love to read them. I always send Steve over screenshots of some of the best comments after Steve and I talk. So make sure you hit the like button on this video on either side to send this out into the YouTube universe so more people see it. We'll put the link to Steve's website right there down below. I want to thank you for watching this video all the way through, being a regular listener, or welcome if you are new here. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell notification as well. And I want to thank you for your time, Steve.
You bet. Thanks, brother.